Hello and welcome to this video on when to dig your Yamadori to have the most success at turning it into a bonsai. While bonsai as an art has in the last 50 or so years become one focused on special nurseries, tailored to turning out ready to style if not already styled trees that make bonsai as simple and straightforward as possible, it has not always been the case. Some of the truly magnificent specimens we see today have been in the works for years, but they themselves did not come from a nursery. Instead, they were wild trees, shrubs, vines and bushes that were grudgingly turned into works of art. This kind of tree is called a yamadori, or from the mountains. While rarer now to see yamadori, they still exist. Much of the absence is down to the lack of places to collect or harvest yamadori specimens. There are also problems around protected species, permits and more that get in the way. With a little work or lateral thinking, you can still get yamadori. It may not be quite the same experience. Less mountains and more negotiating. Unless the trees start talking to you, in which case, negotiation and mountains are probably going to be involved. Possibly some very angry trees too. First of all, a good place to start looking is near to home. That is your neighbours and suburb. If you are fortunate enough to live in suburbia or similar, you may find that many gardens are large, established, and so full of trees, shrubs, and vines. At the same time, as people get old, enter aged care, or just die, their houses are sold to younger people who lack the time or inclination to care for such a large and complicated yard. You may be able to negotiate to remove the trees, shrubs, vines, and more. Those are the ones they do not want, or to take away the stumps and similar of those that have been cut down. Ideally, you'll be able to collect it yourself, as this means the best possible outcomes for you and the yamadori to be based on what follows. That will mean discussing with the owners about when and what you can collect. The worst case scenario for you will be that you can only collect the stumps of the trees that have been cut down. This is not to say they aren't viable, just that they may not be in the best of health. This brings us to the core issue for this video, timing. Depending on what you want to collect, it should be done in either midwinter or early spring. It will be based on what species it is and the traits it exhibits. A dormant species, such as oak, hawthorn and similar, should be collected in winter. An evergreen or species with little dormancy, short dormancy periods, or that is very vigorous in growth, should be collected in spring. And now for what to do at each time. Let's work from winter first, as this is arguably the most forgiving period. It is the longest time frame, as you have up to a month if you work solely on the midwinter approach. A little bit earlier and a little bit later won't matter so much, but assuming only the peak month of winter. Winter is good as the tree is dormant, and so any work or modifications needed to make the yamadori collectible go unnoticed until spring. The kind of changes we're thinking of include lopping off major branches, cutting the trunk down to a much more convenient size, and rather obviously uprooting the whole plant. The other benefit to winter is that the soil should be at least somewhat moist, and that in some ways makes digging easier. Travelling to the tree in question can look like a walk through the dead marches of Middle Earth, but digging itself should be easier. To begin, winter has the tree in dormancy. Many have no leaves, so you can see and choose which tree to collect as yamadori. This will not be true of all species and all trees, but it should apply to most you harvest at this time. This is good and should be used to choose the right combination of branch structure, trunk and nebari. As the tree is dormant, the branches that you cut free from the plant, or need to prune the trunk down to size, will go unnoticed. They will not be as much of a problem. Come spring, they will also begin to grow back and cover up the wounds you've created. As the tree is dormant and bare of growth, the digging process will also be easier for the tree. And by that, we mean the tree will less actively miss the roots that you cut away while digging. As you are reducing the root volume by a massive amount, the tree will not react well if you did this while it was actively growing. Imagine if you suddenly had your food cut off by more than half. You'd probably be very unhappy, if not hangry. The active growth issue is why we strongly suggest if a species is a strong grower, such as figs or in some cases junipers, you should instead collect or harvest them in spring. Where dormancy is key to keeping the yamadori alive in the case of collecting winter specimens, The opposite is true in spring. That growth is what will keep the yamadori alive. The specimens are ideally only just growing or blooming with leaves and flowers when you go to harvest them. This gives you enough insight to what is going to happen and choose the right specimens with the best hope of growing into what you want, while also simultaneously having the best chances of survival. Further, as you dig the tree out of the ground, it will experience some shock and horror at being uprooted and kidnapped. Not quite Princess Peach with Bowser levels of horror, but enough. This shock will lead to two things when you get them home or to your workshop. The first is growth of new roots. The tree will begin to grow new roots to make up for what you dig. This will be driven in part by the new foliage and growth. On the other side is the foliage supported by those new roots that you took with the yamadori. As the foliage canopy grows, it will make up for and heal away any harm you've caused, and this means the collection process of the yamadori in spring should have a better recovery time. You'll get faster root growth and you should have faster foliage growth, assuming you do no other work to it while it recovers. Hopefully this will help you decide when to collect any possible yamadori bonsai specimens that you have been considering, but hesitant due to the risk of them dying. It's not necessarily prescriptive, but it should give you some idea as to when is better, but not necessarily best in all cases, for a given specimen. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please do post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.